Welcome to the Religiously Offensive Podcast.
We did that with blue shirts too.
But technically, you could consider all of us tie-dye because our dye is we tie our dye, and then they're tied.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Nope.
Not
It's
even
a
a
reach.
little bit.
I'm not going to put that in there.
Yeah.
You tie.
Don't even try.
Yeah.
Don't even try to make it make sense.
It was more of a thought thing. We think here. We think on this podcast.
Most of the time.
Yeah, well,
Are we gonna pour the glasses before we get going, or are we just gonna
I'm
finger
gonna
a ball of
pour
ice?
the whiskey. Yes,
No, it's going to be a bit.
Oh,
it'll be a
Gonna
bit.
be- It's gonna be a bit.
So we'll start officially. Welcome back, Gabby. We missed you.
Wow.
I missed you guys.
I don't even know. It just
feels right.
The
It wasn't the
chemistry
same
was
without you
just-
guys.
The chemistry was there, but it was different.
It was heartbreaking.
And I didn't like how different it was.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's
So
I felt so lonely.
all over there by
all
himself.
my like the whole.
Yeah, you were front and center. I
We even
watched.
took out that chair.
Did not like it.
So yeah. First of all, I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. Not just have an excuse to drink, but I will say that it's a taboo subject for a lot of people, especially in like legalistic kind of world. But first, I wanted to say that we're always looking for new things to talk about. If anyone out there has anything they want to submit, we may or may not talk about it. But you could submit to info@religiouslyoffensive.com.
Blow it up.
Yeah, if you're surprised that we got a 2-word domain name, so am I. I don't know how that's possible at 2022.
It was fate.
The Lord's in this.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not surprised.
So, so we're going to start off by getting a little bit. I got a surprise for you guys. So, a couple years ago when Nathan and I were on a road trip, we just happened to be in Frankfort, Tennessee, where Buffalo Trace is. And so, if you're not familiar with bourbon, and just to clear something up, bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. So when people say, yeah, I like whiskey, I also like
Say it.
bourbon.
Sorry.
makes it
Start
different?
that over. The not all is, but this is.
Bourbon is a type of whiskey.
So
Right.
all bourbon is whiskey.
Yes,
But not all whiskey is bourbon.
that's correct.
What other
bourbon is a
small
subset.
category of whiskey, just like Jameson is Irish whiskey.
is Jameson a category?
No.
Okay, so
that's
what
a
are the other
brand.
categories?
So I don't know why this is breaking my brain. So whiskey is the umbrella,
Yes.
and bourbon's like a little.
Yep. Bourbon. Bourbon's in there.
What else?
Irish whiskey, Scotch. They're all whiskey.
okay.
The Japanese stuff they're coming out with,
So-
with Japanese whiskey,
Oh.
that would be
Irish,
whiskey too.
the Scottish. Is
It's
bourbon
different.
like an American thing?
It's different because
Bourbon's
it's made from
typically-
grains like corn.
So bourbon is typically, bourbon, and I'm sorry, people out there, if I fudge this, but bourbon is like, I don't know why I said it that way.
Fudge.
Yep. So bourbon is like, I think it's a territorial thing. You know how like cognac can only come from like a certain place in France or like grapes or whatever for
King
that?
Louis the 13th.
Yeah, so it's like that with bourbon. Like bourbon originated in Kentucky, and then so that's why Jack.
knew it was American.
So that's why Jack Daniel's isn't considered a bourbon. It's Tennessee whiskey because it's from
We
Tennessee.
Is that another?
Drove. What was
Sub-
it?
I think we drove
Tennessee
past
whiskey
the
is
Frankfurt
like
one
that,
too.
yeah.
Was it Jim Beam?
We drove past a lot because there's a lot in Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky goes
They
hard.
kill it. Well, that's where it's from. So bourbon. That's where bourbon's from. They call it the Bourbon Trail, like all those distilleries.
Dude, I think it was Jim Beam. It was epic.
But it's like one of those
It looked
things.
cool, yeah.
Yeah. So there's there are other places trying to make bourbon, right, and call it bourbon, but a lot of loyalists would say it's not really bourbon. Anyway, that's enough for that lesson. Let's get to this. So I got this. We were on the Bourbon Trail in Frankfurt at Buffalo Trace. E.H. Colonel Taylor, my opinion, maybe just a little bit better than Eagle Rare, one of their other bourbons. And then I also have just kind of their regular standard Buffalo Trace, which you can pretty easily find here. But this stuff is actually harder to find here unless you're a bar and you have a distributor.
Use our promo code religiously offensive for 10% off.
That doesn't exist, but I really hope someday it does. So wanted to break this open today because I felt like I was saving
You're
for a
selling
special occasion. And this is a special occasion. And it's on video, like I told Justin, so I can watch this over and over.
So this has never been opened.
No, it's brand new.
You gotta okay.
Brand new, bro. And just so
need the-
everyone is aware, Luke is not drinking this with us today. We've got some Heineken Zero, which has 0 alcohol. Luke is currently, my man is hard right now.
That's right. 75
3 weeks
hard.
hard.
75 hard.
Yeah. So you know,
Clarify here.
Clarify.
not something I could live up to.
Don't call
But
doctors, yeah.
this man is a legend, so he's sticking with it. So, but we got him something because
Impressive.
I feel like it's appropriate for today's discussion.
I think the pop needs to happen in the microphone.
Yeah. Go ahead and keep talking while I'm figuring this out.
If you guys would like to see the rest of our alcohol ratings, check us out at Religiously Wasted. I'm just kidding. That's called addiction, folks.
We do not
Don't
support that
condone
here.
that.
Do not.
Religiously wasted. Oh man. Yeah.
Oh shoot!
Good
Addiction
idea,
is a
though.
real thing.
Good idea, though. We should check on that domain.
Pretend I didn't just pop that.
Wow.
That was
That's gonna sound
so
great.
beautiful.
That's gonna sound great.
Yeah. Now I can.
Thanks to Justin for the balls.
My pleasure. Only had 2.
If people are just listening and not watching, they're going to be very confused.
Yeah, thanks for the balls, Jess.
The
My pleasure.
ice balls. Let's clarify, because
So what does a bottle of this run you?
I don't know what it retails for. Maybe $50,
Okay.
but people gouge here. So like if you can't get whiskey certain place, it doesn't matter if it's 50. It's like for Willet is the same thing. I couldn't get Willet, and then I paid like $70 at this local store. They had it, but they'll gouge a little bit. You know.
Interesting. Yeah, they do that with Pokemon cards as well.
Yeah.
It's turds.
I
Thank
didn't
you, sir.
measure anything, but if you want more, feel free to have some Buffalo Trace because I'm putting this away.
Can you mix them?
That's a little sacrilegious.
You might as well slap JJ in the face.
Top me off, daddy.
Top me off, daddy. All right. Well, there you go. Also, just to make clear to everybody, I'm aware of the stupid way that I sound when I talk. Like we all are kind of getting better at this. But when I listen to myself and I'm like, it's like one of those things like, you know, like, and so, I mean, I string together like 13 like little like
Likes?
buffer phrases.
Like.
Oh yeah. One of those things. I always say that. So I'll probably continue to say it. But just so you're like, yeah, this guy freaking talks like an idiot.
You know, we could
It's
just
jabroni.
drink every time you say like.
I'm certainly aware that's not a good idea.
Is better than like?
Probably
I think so.
I had
context.
a speech class
Because
in
there's so
college
much.
and they taught you
there's
to pause.
so much.
Yeah, it's
there's
hard.
So much. That's
It
a
is
strong
so-
sibilance.
But it makes
So
you
just
powerful.
you just don't love the formation of some of the sentence. You don't just like hate your voice.
No.
It's definitely a
It's-
you got a
self-conscious
great voice.
thing because
Thanks.
I've
I'm
listened
just
and I
used to
didn't
hearing
think
it.
like, oh, JJ sounds like an idiot.
Yeah, well, so same. When I would listen back, I was like, I sound stupid.
Yeah, it's just
And
you.
I never even thought of like JJ sounds stupid. Also, it was just
we need
me.
to do this. Did you
Just
guys?
you.
Did you guys know? Cheers.
Cheers.
Love you guys.
There's gonna be like an actual cheers.
Wow.
Love to all.
What's the one? What's the super cheesy one? The
Cheers
ships,
to me, cheers to you.
but the best ships are friendships.
First of all,
there
you
you
like
go.
you like whiskey. How is this?
I do.
Tell me.
It's pretty good. It's smooth.
Yeah, I do like it.
So, if you're familiar,
You want to
like,
smell it?
if you like,
can't.
if you like Woodford,
I'm so hard right now. I can't. I am.
Keep
I am
it going,
16
Doyle.
days hard. How? I don't know.
Nothing on.
I see the finish line, baby.
those fumes,
Oh.
those fumes
Come on.
will make you soft.
I was telling him earlier. He inspired me to get my dog on 75 hard. So
Okay.
Vader started 75 hard yesterday.
That's something I'd be willing to do.
I kind of like
Two
it.
walks.
I think kids are just
for
like
my kids.
Think, boy.
the kids have just existed
Like, oh,
that
yeah.
way.
They need
Like they're
2-a-days.
constantly working out and they don't drink alcohol and like they're
Yeah.
always on some kind of diet. They're always refusing food, so you know.
They're doing childhood
Pretty
hard.
much. Yeah, it's just like the way it is, right? I mean,
It's just hard in general
they're always on some kind of
for
diet.
everyone
I
involved.
can't imagine. Yeah.
No, the diet my
Sorry.
my youngest daughter is on is basically the one where she doesn't like anything you're offering her in the moment. It's just like, you know, she'll be like, "Here, eat this avocado." No, I don't want it. All right. Have some cereal. No, I want the avocado.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
All right.
whatever. So, I mean, kids are so high maintenance, but worth every second
Wow,
at the same time.
that's sweet.
Yeah, I have to say that. My wife will hear this. Yeah. So the other thing I did want to announce and say is that we're probably going to hit up 10 of these episodes pretty quick just to get some content rolling out there. And then we'll probably go on a semi-weekly cadence. So like maybe 2 episodes a week. I'm not going to commit to specific days because it could be different.
Sure.
But, you know, the people who anticipate and look forward to these episodes, like they can't stand not
The
having another
hundreds and
episode.
hundreds of people.
No, thousands.
Thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. It's like you're not speaking the right language, Luke.
You're right. That's unreal.
We're
So-
taking over.
One
Yeah.
city at a
Anyway, so like we kind of sometimes start going around. So just, you know, based on your upbringing, how did you see alcohol? How were you taught to deal with alcohol? And in understanding that maybe me and Justin's maybe a little more similar in how, you know, when we grew up, how everyone viewed alcohol around us. You know, but in understanding and trying to, you know, just kind of lay the foundation here. What was it like when you grew up?
So the specific denomination I grew up in was called Assemblies of God, and they just take a pretty hard stance. So like, for example, to be a pastor in the AG, like you basically can't drink ever.
Yeah.
So it's just straight up.
You lose
it's
your,
not allowed.
lose your credentials.
Yeah, it's big time. So, dad being credentialed, like both of my parents neither of them have ever drank or been drunk. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was just a hard no. There is no wiggle room. It was just
like not even a sip.
no.
Yeah, it was
I respect that, honestly. That's gotta be hard. That's a lot of self-control.
Well, and then it also makes sense. It's like, well, you know, you probably have a better chance of success if you never get into it. It's definitely a double-edged sword.
That's a good point. It's probably true with a lot of things.
It just takes a lot of it takes a lot of self-control. But yeah, Gab, how about you?
Yeah, probably opposite of you guys. I mean, my parents are giving me Jello shots on my 15th birthday.
there you go.
time.
Let's go.
Isn't it funny how cultural this is? I mean, just because we went to Ireland a few years ago. I mean, I love Ireland so much. If anyone ever has a chance to go, please go. So anyway, we went to Ireland, and you know, we went to this one pub. It was just pub is like a lifestyle, right? People after work, they all go drink, watch football, soccer for all of our American listeners, which is pretty much going to be everybody right now.
Well,
Except for our high
Yeah.
Irish.
So basically, you know, they'll go, and this is coming from people I know from England. But essentially, you know, they after work they go drink, they watch football. It's just part of the culture, part of the lifestyle. When we were in Ireland at the pub, I mean, you saw a kid or parents giving their 15, 16-year-old kids money for beer, like beer money, right? Which is hilarious, right? So for here, it's so strict and
Right.
you know, and tapered off. You can't you can't drink till you're 21. You know, which is crazy, considering how young people can drink in other countries, and just knowing that it's cultural, right? So how many people just and granted, there's more people that are okay with it now. Was the interesting thing, you know, when I came down, and I never was a pastor. I was never credentialed, but I grew up in the AG, worked for the AG for a while. And it's just like, I knew it's just so many people, if they drink, they had to hide it or whatever. Right. You know, and it's one of those things where you take into account all these people that are just like smoking and, you know, cigars. Like, I guess there's nothing really looked down on as much with that. Right. Was that in there too? Cigarettes and cigars and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, just none of it.
All that stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the AG, but I know in general, a lot of
I don't know
times drinking is looked on differently. And this is really more about everything. So this is not only alcohol. We're talking about drugs, you know, every other drug. Alcohol is a drug. So when people say drugs and alcohol, they should really just say drugs because they're all drugs. But you know, when you take a look at all the people's reception to this, people who can control what they're doing, it just doesn't make sense because it explicitly, I mean, there's verses that mention in the Bible, it's obviously anything in excess is a bad thing, right? But then it's just one of those things where it's not necessarily condoning it, but you know, you talk about in Bible days, you know, Jesus and wine and all that, and people try to downplay the wine as not being as strong as it is now, and all these different things, and they work so hard to like fight the alcohol, right? I mean, it's just like we have to fight this, but it's the same people that probably have no issue with caffeine. I mean, caffeine
Same thing in addiction.
is a drug. People like that. If you want to talk about an epidemic, I mean, more people are addicted to caffeine than probably any other drug. You get headaches, you get withdrawal, right?
Right.
You can overdose on it. You know, there's pastors that go through multiple pots a day of coffee, right? I mean, and it's you know, and I just found out something sobering about caffeine, which is kind of irritating at the same time. I was telling you.
Don't tell me.
So caffeine doesn't
Earmuffs,
actually
Yabby.
caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. It just
I don't
dulls
care.
it dulls the receptors. I know. But I think about this stuff a lot, and it just bothered me. It just dulls the receptors in your brain that tell you you're tired. So you're really just like you burning your candle at both ends when you drink caffeine, because you have this perception of all this energy that you don't really have. So it's just when you look at that, it's just kind of that sneaky drug. It's considered a drug by the FDA. It's a neurotoxin, right? Learned that from one of my friends this weekend. And you know, alcohol is actually obviously toxic, right? So it's just one of those
Poison.
It's cultural. The way that we view things differently is cultural, completely cultural. And you know, you've heard the people say like, "Oh, I can go die for my country at 18, but I can't have a drink." That's kind of absurd, you know, right? I think we all understand how absurd that comparison is. And you know, growing up in the church, I did not, you know, I mentioned that our family kind of all started going to church when I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of when I accepted Christ and everything. And my dad he liked beer. He liked like kind of his Miller High Life, but he only had it like once a year on his birthday. That's the only time he like really bought a 6-pack and drank. Which is fine. Like, you know, he was never an alcohol. He knew how to control it and all that stuff. He never had issues or in his past or anything. But it was just kind of, I had no exposure, right? I didn't really know what it was. I wasn't allowed trying it. You know, I wasn't taught how to deal with it. I wasn't taught the effects of it.
Yeah.
And I go off to college, you know, again, one of those things, like you said the other day, you feel that acceptance.
Yeah.
And you're just like, all right, well, I'm going to go ham on this. And so, you know, I partied hard when I actually went to Full Sail here in Orlando. And it was just kind of, I mean, and I was into the gym at that time. I worked out with like my trainers and stuff. And then they would like, these are like completely like secular people. Like I wasn't, you know, hanging out with Christian friends or whatever. And I would just go like party, get hammered, you know, which led to like an ulcer, some other like I was just like, obviously you have consequences for any of those kind of actions, right? Physical and spiritual, emotional. But you know, I look back at it and it's just like, because everyone took such a crazy stance on this, and I was never exposed to the proper way to handle this. I feel like I suffered, right? I don't want my kids to suffer, right? Like I feel like overall we're focusing on the wrong thing here, you know? And so that was kind of, I guess, my experience growing up.
Yeah, mine was similar. I think, you know, this is probably a really extreme example, but it's, you know, something that can be ultimately dangerous to you. Now, like, I think for me, like, I don't hold any sense of bitterness or resentment, you know, for not, you know, being introduced to it in a different way. My first experience was not supervised, and it was like, basically, it was rage. Like, we're here to rage, and like, it was literally a thing. It was senior year, go to party, and the goal was to see how many beers you could chug. Like, it was just, I threw up every time, but like, it is what it is. I was like the ultimate people pleaser, right? You know?
Yeah.
So, but you know, when I think about it, it's in a similar sense that something can be dangerous to you. Similarly, like when you teach a child how to use a weapon or a gun, right? It's like, this is a very dangerous thing. We need to be really careful when we use it. And it's obviously a very extreme example. And if your parents, like for me, my parents didn't do it anyway. So there's no way for them to know or anything. But, you know, I think about it, you know, when I have kids, you know, I don't have a conviction that I shouldn't ever touch it. Obviously it requires a ton of wisdom.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a similar sense, you know, something that could be so damaging, you know, I mean, it helps to just train kids to see it as not just something that's fun, but it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, just disclaimer, I don't blame my parents or anything. You know, I had an incredible upbringing. I don't downplay any of that. I think it's just more so the culture.
Sure.
They created this reluctance for them to talk about it with me.
Well, Gabby, do you want to expand on what your experience was?
Yeah, I guess just based off of that one, my parents are great, so I don't want to just based off
Parents are
throwing me Jello shots.
Yeah.
Like, well, I think with that it brought like a lot of trust, right? So it's like my
Yeah.
parents were okay, like, and I know. So I guess I'll just go right into it. Like weed, for instance. Like my mom, like at 15, she was just like, if you ever want to try it, let me know. We'll do it together. Because if you have a bad like experience, I want you to be with me. And I mean, that's just so comforting. So it's just like, I didn't want to just go out and try. Like I felt comfortable enough. Like my first time smoking weed, it was with my mom.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I mean, in like drinking, I was never a big drinker. Like after high school, during high school, whatever now, I'm never a big drinker. And I think that's because of just like the open communication I had with my parents. Like I think most kids, they want to go out and do all those things because it's bad and you're not allowed to do it. And that makes you want to do it.
Yeah.
But it's like for my mom or my parents or whatever, they were just like, you know, anything you want to do, just let us know. Like, obviously you're not allowed to do everything, right? Like there's limits,
Line.
but like talk to me about it, because obviously with their, you know, teenage years, adulthood, they tried most things.
Right.
So they're like, you know, this is what's like okay in moderation. This is like, no, don't do this. Yeah, but I think just that trust made me more responsible. And, you know, I never really got into, I was like a good kid just because I had such good open communication with my parents. So
Nice.
That's sweet.
That's
I'm going to
incredible.
display this
What
up
about,
here.
what about you, Doyle?
Yeah, talk to us.
I mean, my dad was an alcoholic in his 20s. So he got sober, and I've never seen him take a sip of alcohol.
Wow.
My mom, she drinks. She drinks. She's been drinking since I can remember. So, and I don't know, as far as like exposing me to it, I don't remember being like taught what it is, what it can do.
How to deal with it.
Yeah.
And did your mom drink like before, like while they were still together, or was it more or less after? Okay.
Yeah, both. And so, like, when I've talked about it before, but high school for me was my experiment time. So my first time I ever drank a lot, I was 15, and just like with the boys, and none of us really knew. We were just like, oh, this is supposed to be something. And so it's kind of like Gabby said, like, oh, we don't know what this is going to do, but it's supposed to be bad, so let's do it. Right. And so
Well, it's like at that age, it's like, you want to have fun? You want to hang out? This is what we're doing. Like,
This is what everyone's
that's the way to
doing.
have fun.
And-
Well, and
Yeah,
those were the
I
cool.
wasn't-
Those were the coolest
wasn't
kids in school.
prepared.
That's who everybody wanted. I mean, to
Yeah.
hang out with. You know,
so many,
it's-
so many dynamics in that that I just wasn't ever. And I don't
climbing
think
the
it's
social hierarchy. Yeah.
Blocking you. Can you see the camera?
Yeah.
See the lens?
It's above it, yeah.
Look
So,
at
yeah,
look
that's
at the
kinda
good
my-
people. Sorry, Luke. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. I don't know. I went through personally like stages of like I was definitely the people pleaser, high school, college.
Yeah.
But
And I feel like that gets a bad rap sometimes, but like, you know, you have to be careful with that. But there's an element, like, I don't know if you had similar experiences, but like, I was kind of similar. Like, I was at the time, I was making a lot more money than anyone else. And kind of like 18, 19 during that age. And so like, I had my own place. Like, so, I mean, sure, there's some, it might've been like immaturity or whatever. But like, dude, it was cool to like help facilitate and like be a part. And I mean, the
Grow
problem
friendships out of it.
yeah, and the problem, the reason that it is a problem for a lot of people is because it is like to me, my experience was it was kind of like it just dulls like the ego a little bit, and it's like when you're in just a good group of people, it just
Well, it
It's
gets
just-
dicey. Well, in my experience, it would be a bad thing when like you would please people at the expense of like things you don't want to do.
Right.
For sure.
And that was, I mean, I was
that's
there.
definitely,
I was there
For sure.
A lot.
Yeah,
of
I guess I'm not
times.
talking necessarily just alcohol, but it's like, because I am like the habitual people
Some people
pleaser.
would say that any substance that you have to affect your mood or attitude or any way that you are is wrong.
Well, that's what I grew up being taught is like anything that affects your mind at all.
I don't agree with that, but I'm just telling you
Yeah.
what a lot of people's perspective is.
Sure.
That's
But then they will go to Starbucks every morning,
Yeah.
and it's
I'll give my mom credit though. She didn't do coffee either. Mom, you got to chill on the hot chocolate, but she doesn't do caffeine.
it's the
so-
sugar. That's still sugar's not
Gotta
good.
earn it.
Sugar ain't good for you, you know.
But okay.
I will say, hey, before we go out, like talk about people pleasing, I want to cover that because I can't handle when people like rag on people for being people pleasers.
Yeah.
Because that's something that someone calls someone who likes to stir shit up. Like the people that like to cause drama are the first ones that call people pleasers. Like the people pleasers are really like peacemakers.
Right. Well, there's an
know?
element of serving.
Yeah, and I'm
They're
just
looking
like
for an
and peop-
emotional response.
No, and it's just like,
And
oh,
you
you're
want
just a people pleaser.
you wanna
Well,
facilitate
F
your
you,
friends.
dude. Like because you're the one that likes to just cause problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would rather be with a people pleaser than someone who likes to cause problems.
I can just speak from my experience. I got a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction out of like procuring and kind of like creating like just fun experiences for my friends.
Yeah, you just need boundaries with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
Anyway, I'm
Like
sorry.
anything.
You need
Go
the
for
right
it.
friends too. Like you don't need
Also
those people
true.
that are like one more minute. Like if you're like, I'm pretty good, and you're like, oh, don't be a
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. No, those are my
don't
friends.
be a vulva.
But
those are my those are my friends.
Definitely my
Yeah, those
friends,
are the
too.
But they were,
moments where it
but,
could be
yeah, but we
dicey.
all like it wasn't.
There's a difference between
Yeah.
okay, if you're in a safe environment,
There was never any
you know,
bad intentions
being,
or
like
ill will.
safe environment versus like, you know, you're on the verge of getting a bar fight and your friends are telling you to drink more.
Yeah.
Is different, right? I mean,
Oh, for sure.
If you're just hanging,
There are
you
friends
don't-
like that though.
Sure are, because they just again want to stir shit up. But I mean, I will say that kind of goes into when is it okay? At what point is it over the top, right? At what point is it too much? And then the follow up question to that is if you're in a safe place, like what matters? What matters how much
Yeah.
you drink? I mean, right? Like some people, people eat ice cream till they throw up. I mean,
But that's also bad, right? I mean,
it is
it's like-
bad. Of
Gluttony.
course. Yeah,
it is one of the
gluttony.
7 deadly
It
sins.
actually is a sin. Never mind.
Sure
Sorry.
is.
So, never mind. Take that back. I guess what I
Daddy.
mean is like if I'm like
Got him.
if I'm getting drunk at home with my wife, and it's just us two, we're in a safe place. Is that wrong? Right?
I don't think so, but
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
I think
I don't
it also
think so
depends.
either.
Like, all right, are you drinking until like, all right, I got a buzz, like I'm a little drunk, or are you like, are you doing it to
You
like
slamming
drain
bottles.
something out, right? Like, are you doing it to like forget about
Escape.
something that you need to be
No,
worried
so
about?
for
or-
me, it's like I just need so one drink will typically just kind of one or two will typically give me
You're a
that.
large man.
Give me give
All
me
those
that
muscles.
Okay, all right. One or
turning
two.
red, he's turning red.
So embarrassed.
Stop.
So I would say the first one or two drinks for me, typically on a night out or something like that, is like just kind of brings my guard down a little bit. I'm not worried about like all the anxious things that I'm thinking about, and my brain is just out of control. Aside from that,
Gets you in the moment.
Yeah.
Like you just
I
enter
would
the
say-
present moment. You're like,
and
this
granted,
is
like
just,
most people would say if they had a rough day, yeah, the drinking helps. But at the same time, when I'm at that point where it's just like I'm kind of tipsy, and I told my wife, I'm going on a side tangent here because my wife's always asking me, how drunk are you right now? Right? If we're at a party, or how much you feeling it, right? Because drunk's a bad, like drunk makes it sound like you're like blackout drunk.
The
right?
answer is
Because
always a number of drinks.
so there's a
well, no, it's not number of drinks. It's on a scale from 1 to 10. Where are you at right now? I'm always a 3, no matter what. It doesn't.
trained
I
himself.
always say,
Like, I will not self-incriminate.
but she knows this,
Christina?
right? She knows this. She knows I say this, and I've admitted to her, yeah, sure, maybe I'm, not as whatever. So she's like, and I don't like the whole like from tipsy to drunk either, because I don't think that like, because drunk to me is like drunk, like that's like
You're not
where
in control of your
control
faculties.
yourself.
Yeah.
So recently I came up with a third one, and it goes. So it goes. It's a scale.
I'm so excited. Yes.
So there's tipsy,
yes.
jingled,
Ooh.
and then
Nailed
drunk.
it.
Yeah. So this is actually something that people say. Like I think it's like an English thing or something, and I was just like, I love that.
That's amazing.
So now, instead of having to give a scale from 1 to 10, it's probably always going to be jingled.
that is hilarious.
And it doesn't matter where I'm at.
Never stop
That's
at
perfect.
It'd be
tipsy.
like, yeah, I would say I'm strongly jingled, or it's like,
Yeah.
I'm approaching jingled.
That's funny.
I think it's fine because if it was you were approaching drunk, that could be interpreted badly. But if you're like, I'm approaching, I'm not all jingled.
you got to land the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I forget what I was talking about now.
So okay, so
we were talking about getting drunk in a private situation.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's important to ultimately the context of what the scriptures actually say. So like Ephesians 5:18 straight up says, "Don't get drunk on wine." So then you could dive into that a little
You know
bit
what's
more.
interesting
Like, what
though?
does drunk mean?
While we're talking about Proverbs, another
Ephesians. I'm sorry.
Oh, you said okay. Well, you said Proverbs, so it made me think of
I
Proverbs.
said
He
Ephesians.
said Ephesians.
I heard.
Point for the good guys.
I heard.
Where are you at,
I'm gonna put this away.
All right, take a sip. Let me finish my thought.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. What are you gonna say?
No, what I was saying in Proverbs, because I had it pulled up because it's something I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up. So it's like top of mind. So you're like,
yeah.
a book of the Bible, Proverbs. So in Proverbs 31, 6 and 7, give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those who are those that be of heavy hearts. This is King James, so I stumble on this.
Give wine to those that be of heavy hearts.
Yeah. It says that. And this is something I read
Interesting.
years ago that I was really confused. I was like, let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. So obviously this is out of
I
context.
have never heard that verse.
This is out of context.
Yeah, I need the context.
So, okay, we can read the whole
like it,
chapter
though.
if you want.
No, I
but
need
the,
more.
the
Probably don't.
context, he's telling people that if you're a ruler, you're a person of authority, you shouldn't be touching alcohol because you have to make important decisions. You have to be discerning. That was kind of that was what it was
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
and then
Solomon-
it goes into this
yeah.
part of like, wine is for these people. So you shouldn't have wine. Wine's for these people.
So is there a distinction between strong drink and wine, or are they talking about the same thing?
I mean, wine unto those that be of heavy hearts, let him drink and forget
Are they
his
saying
poverty.
wine is the strong drink?
It doesn't matter what the drink is. It's saying drink until you forget your poverty. That's what it's a drink and forget and let him drink and forget his poverty
interesting.
and remember his misery no more. It's just like with that argument, it's just like people talk about how they don't want to
can-
give to the homeless people because they go buy alcohol. This is basically saying, well, let them go buy alcohol.
That broke my brain.
There's no way.
It's weird.
I need more context because there's no way.
No, I mean, that's pretty
it's
cut
fine.
and dry.
It's
No,
fine.
no.
It's fine. I don't want to re-record this, so we better go back. We're gonna go
no
back.
way.
All right. Well, while you're going back,
All right.
you still-
I'll read the whole chapter. What translation?
No,
would
no,
you
no. It needs to be more than the chapter.
Well, no,
you need
so
to know who's
Solomon-
writing it, who is he
that's
writing to.
Solomon. But Solomon also says that like wine isn't for kings. So I think
No. Because listen to what you're saying. You're saying go get homeless people drunk.
No. I'm not saying that.
the Bible said that.
No.
I'm taking it to an extreme. It's
there's
not.
no way.
No. I don't think they should be. I granted, like every dime that you give to someone,
also-
you would hope they're
also-
doing the right thing with it.
Right.
You don't need to drink
It's not.
3 bottles of wine
That was a
to
joke.
forget. Like I think, without knowing a ton about the verse, it's like you don't need a lot of alcohol to just kind of help alleviate some of the stresses of life or to get your mind on, because to me it really is, when you're doing it responsibly, it in the same way why people use plant medicine in a ton of different like ancient cultures and religions is because it helps you bypass the ego. And then you're able to get to whether they call it a higher conscience or just a deeper level of awareness. And like kind of a lot of my thoughts about this are ultimately like we in certain circles like to make alcohol the bad guy. To me, I see it similarly to like money. Like money doesn't make you a bad person, but the Bible also said it's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. But for me, my experience is if you're a jerk, money's just going to make you a bigger jerk. And with alcohol, if there's some stuff on the inside, alcohol, that's why they say drunk words are sober thoughts, is a pretty common phrase. It's like alcohol often is something that just like brings to the surface, because I'm sure many people who have experience with drinking at all will know it's like probably been in a situation where you're just like, oh, dang, tell me how you really feel. Like, it's like the truth finally comes out, like monkey's out of the bottle, whatever. Pineapple Express reference. That obviously makes no sense.
Great movie.
Yeah, fantastic movie. But so it's interesting because, you have Ephesians 5:18. I think this is the one that's don't get drunk on wine. Other verses say, like, because it leads to debauchery, which is just kind of the lack of control. But here's an interesting verse. Ecclesiastes 9:7, it says, drink your wine with a merry heart. And that's why, for me, it kind of boils into this thing of, look, it takes a lot of responsibility, self-control, borders.
It's like we talked about.
You need to be smart.
Talked about cursing, and it's like you do it like
not out of anger,
tear someone down. I mean, that's obviously awful. But then you know, when Justin loves the shit out of someone,
I want him to know.
He just,
if that, I'm not gonna tell mom,
positive.
because she doesn't like the 4-letter words. But it's like if it's someone I have a relationship with.
If you said that to your mom, I don't know what I would do. I would just
if that ever does. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you're gonna watch this, but if we do that, it's gonna be on camera because we need the expression.
You said do
So it's interesting to me that it talks about like drinking, like the condition of your heart when you do consume alcohol.
Yeah, that's good.
In a similar
heard
sense.
a point about that. Some pastor was talking like, if you're gonna drink, do it when you're happy.
Right.
Instead of when you're sad, because then if something happens in your life where you're in a season of sadness, you're going to go right back to it.
It's a common, we celebrate with it all throughout scripture. Like I was just looking up the story of Jesus' first miracle. And this is like honestly hilarious to me. So, cause I like context, right? So they're at a wedding and they run out of wine, which means they already drank all the wine. Right. And the word that they use in the original first Greek translation is oinos. I probably mispronounced that, but it's OINOS. And that's what is referred, because I always grew up, because you ask these questions and then people are just like, well, we don't know it's fermented. It could have been grape juice. And I'm just like, okay, like I don't know enough to really rebut that. But like, so anyways, like the common consensus, I mean, there can be some, like, there's people on both sides, but for the most part, it seems like the word oinos, or however you pronounce that in the Greek, it is referring to fermented wine. So the funny part, and then you look into the story, so he had them gather 6 big, like, mason type, or not, I don't know, 6 big vessels, right? And I looked into
jars
them.
would be too small.
They would be way too small.
was definitely
Maybe they made them bigger back then. I know. I was trying to think of the
Little
actual
mason jars.
All right, everyone take a sip and pass it around.
Little experiment.
Right. So it's large stone water jugs. And it said the kind used during ceremonial washings and weddings typically would hold 20 to 30 gallons. And he gave them 6 more of those after they finished the wine. And it's like, we're talking 120 to 180 gallons of wine. Either that was it had to have been a big wedding. That is an incredibly large amount of alcohol. And low-key, they also did say that it was the best wine they ever had. So shout out Jesus. Good job.
I mean, if anyone could make
So here's a really interesting comment too on that. It's it basically says that so in John 2:11, so he turns the water into wine. It's his first miracle. And it's in John 2:11, he thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. And it's so interesting that we always use faith. This is totally side topic, but we think about faith and preach faith in the sense of like, you can't know that it's going to happen, but faith is just, you have to just hope and believe and trust that it's going to work out. Like faith is the gap between like the evidence and what you see, kind of a thing, right? And so it's like, how interesting is it's like they put their faith in him after he just turned we'll call it an average of 150 gallons of water into the most bomb wine you ever tasted.
Well, it's just kind of like
I saw that, I'd just be like, yeah, dude, I'll follow you.
Yeah. Well,
like, that doesn't take faith.
A lot of people use life experience, miracles, observations that kind of prompt their faith, right? So I would say that, like Lee Strobel, when I heard him the other day, he was basically talking about science as something that pointed to God, right? So as something that someone could view something like, and people do this all the time. They view something as vast as our universe or nature, and they're just compelled to have faith in God, right? So it doesn't, I don't think it makes it bad. Yeah. That's not a bad thing because there's still faith. There's still a gap there, right? It's just that
there's not a lot of gap there.
it kind of makes the gap smaller.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Well, I'm just saying it'd be easier to have faith in Jesus if like I'm walking around seeing these things.
yeah, well, he's not going to turn your water into wine at your house, Justin.
I'm fine with that. But the Bible also does say that we're going to do greater things than he did.
Justin's got like a stone cistern of water in his house. He checks it every day.
Just
He's
cutting
like,
my body open.
Is it
just
today,
doing rain
Jesus?
dances.
Is it today, Jesus?
Just straight Elijah. Was it Elijah who was going with the prophets of Baal?
Yeah.
So here's a question. Here's a question. Here's a thought little sandwich for you.
Love that.
Whoa.
Yep.
Ooh, feed me.
So the Bible says, be sober minded because your enemy what does he say? Prowls around like a lion,
Like a lion.
trying to devour.
Not as a lion.
So
Right.
the question is,
He's the Wizard of Oz.
why and what does drunkenness do to you that makes it bad, right? And so then you think, like, there's obviously physical things about it. Like when you get drunk, you can't control yourself, right? But I think what the Bible's talking about is it's mental, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely it is.
sure.
so like even in the example of like if I'm home by myself, I'm safe physically, like that's good. But then I think because in my experience it's kind of, and I don't know how much truth is behind drunk words or sober thoughts, but I do know that when you get drunk, because I've been drunk before, like your mind goes crazy, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I guess the point is like, even if I'm alone, when I get drunk, am I more open to being devoured? That's kind of the question that I would, I would frame it as
Yeah,
I
and
go
I-
about my decisions.
So
Good.
well, when I would think about that, again, you're talking about being in a physically safe place, but not necessarily a mentally safe place.
Mm-hmm.
For me, a lot of these things kind of come down to when I'm sitting at home, like in my bedroom, my wife and I are just sitting there, and you know, I've had a couple drinks or whatever. I don't necessarily see it as a place where the enemy's going to introduce new thoughts. I'm not saying that couldn't happen. It's just that I think when you eliminate all of the people around you talking, and as long as you can depend on your wife to edify you or whatever, right, just to like keep you on track, I don't necessarily feel that vulnerability you're talking about. But I think it's interesting, and I've never really thought about that before. The separating mental from physical.
I guess it's just the thought of,
So what was the question?
are you more vulnerable to it drunk than you would be sober?
Sure. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
kinda
Sure.
the-
Yeah. And it's
But
like,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. So if you were immunocompromised, but you isolate yourself from everyone, you should still be protected, right? So it's like, but you wouldn't want to be around people because that could, right? So that's kind of how I see it.
Sure.
But yeah, not that it wouldn't. So if you had like internal thoughts,
Right.
that all of a sudden you were subjected to,
Sure.
but the question then is, you know, would you have fallen to those internal thoughts at some point anyway? I don't know.
Right. Right.
That's interesting. It's interesting to meditate on, though.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, like when and then you bounce back to like, okay, if it's all mental and you hear all these verses about like taking your thoughts captive, I know I'm going to be way more equipped to do that sober minded. Like, why am I thinking this? What's the root
100%.
of this? Than if I'm not. And then I'm like,
100%.
I might
And
just
I
be
think-
more liable to act.
And I think
right?
this is what sorry, what were you going to say?
I would say just strictly for devil's avocados, I would say I feel like I can only speak for myself, but I went through periods, especially a lot in my late 20s, where I was drinking nearly every day. And obviously not good, you know. But what's interesting is I agree with you where too many people, it's the escape, especially if you're doing it alone, probably just not a good sign.
Right.
But I've been there. You know, it's the last thing you need is more shame for, you know, not being able to get out of this pit or whatever you want to call it. But it's interesting because I don't want to get into particulars because it really doesn't matter. But I obviously my parents didn't do it ever. So I had no frame of reference for it whatsoever. So my first experience was, oh, this is just a good time. You do it, you get loose, have fun with your friends. and you're back in the hookup culture, so you're just like, maybe I'll get lucky tonight, whatever. It's just the kind of, you're going out, you're just totally you're just being a jerk, but that's just, it's whatever. Not great. Also would not recommend that.
It's not right.
But what's interesting is when I'll never forget being in environments where I would be on a back porch with people, and this is while I was, going, I was either more involved in ministry, but I have memories of being on a back porch, drinking wine, and we maybe would have a cigar going or two, something, and we would sit there and talk about the Lord.
Yeah.
And I would cry, bro.
That's great.
And it was like, because most people just don't,
it's weird.
People think that when you're experiencing the effects of alcohol, it's like your mind can only lead to bad places. It's like, I have had many experiences where I've had a couple glasses of wine and I'll sit there and we'll just cry about the goodness of the Lord. And those are very real experiences.
Yeah.
And it's almost, there's something, and again, I'm not condoning it. Like, it's just, I'm only talking about my experiences, but I think and it's not like you need to train your brain to operate inebriated. Like, it's not what it's about. But I think when we see so many stories in scripture where wine's involved, or even, the communion, Eucharist, like, it's just like they were using wine, and it was like, do this every day in remembrance of me. Mm-hmm. And obviously you don't want to abuse it, but when your mind is on those things of the Lord and the nature of the Lord, like wine, like I have a lot of experiences where it really led to beautiful conversation that was very meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, because you're not so worried about your ego and things like that, you let it go. Like, it's just a very raw, authentic conversation. But again, that requires a lot of wisdom and
you'd say
self-discipline.
So we would say that we kind of ride with this thing where it's like, it could open you up to negative suggestion, but also
You're suggestible one way or the other.
Positive and enlightened suggestion as well. It was interesting.
There's probably a line.
There is a
Right.
line. Yeah, but it's just,
And people just it's like everything.
again, it's about being in a safe place with trusted people. That's, I guess, kind of my thought, right? And I wanted to clear what we kind of talked about up before a little bit, where it was, so I'm going to read the first 9 verses of, what is this, Proverbs 31. So, listen, my son, listen, son of my womb, listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. It's important for us, guys. It is not for kings, Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all the oppressed of their rights. Let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. Let them drink, forget their poverty, and remember their misery no more. Speak for those who do not speak for themselves, the rights of all who are destitute. Speak of and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So it's really talking about, and it may not, I don't necessarily think, reading that whole thing, I don't think it necessarily condones getting drunk. And I think it's more of acknowledging in the time what was happening, right? So it's just like, hey, you're a king. You don't want to make some decision that affects all your people.
Yeah.
Leave that for someone else.
Right. And so, so it's just like, you don't want to be like these guys that, like, the poor people that are drunk to forget their misery.
Right.
It may have been just acknowledging. So
Yeah.
anyway, just wanted to bring that up. But the other part of this is, I just think there's so much power in, and we talked about cursing in the same kind of way, right? Where sometimes people who make a decision not to drink for themselves, have personal convictions, it gets to the point where they're elevating that decision. They're elevating themselves based on that decision above other people, right?
Sure.
And so where you've seen it, over righteous people who are just like, well, I don't drink. This is not my thing. It's just like, yeah, I've never touched the stuff. You can tell when people are being, weird about it. But at the same time, it's just like, and we're supposed to, like, look different as Christians, but I feel like people take that a bit too literally, and they live their life in a way that they're supposed to separate themselves from people in the world.
Here's a quote. I feel like you'll like it.
I feel like I will.
I don't know who, when, where, or what, but some people are so focused on, and this might be dicey, but some Christians are so focused on heavenly things that they become ineffective.
Don't
on
be so
earth.
heavenly minded
Yeah.
that you're of no earthly good.
Like there needs to be,
Here, I'll just have
and
some.
if so, I hear what you're saying.
Do you
There's
want
people
my ice?
that
This
are
is
like,
watered down. You want this? Oh, sorry.
She just apologized
plop her
to the
in there.
mic.
Yeah, we
He just apologized to the mic.
no, I was apologizing to the people. It looked like I was apologizing to them. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, Michael.
I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, he's
so
gonna pee.
yeah, that's kind of my,
You're pulling a JJ.
Sorry about that. No, just so yeah, with the ice thing, we like to share around here. We love our germs.
Gotta eat lunch.
I'm sorry, Luke.
no, yeah. I guess
apologize.
I'm saying the Christian that lives a life of God on earth is not of the earth, but is living on the earth. That like the middle ground of that is where we need to be, right? Eternally focused, but earthly present. You know what I mean? So
A lot of people don't know how to be earthly present.
right, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
Because then
and we
it's
talked
like
about the
what you're
bubble,
talking about.
the bubble thing,
Right.
Where you go to church every Sunday, see the same people at work. Maybe
home.
you're incredible and you saved, like you got all the people around you to follow Jesus at your work.
Yeah,
but then
sure.
you're done.
Yeah,
It's just like who
I
else
don't know where
are you reaching?
that is.
Yeah, so it's valuable because I interact with people all the time, in what I used to do just as an audio engineer. I'd interact with people, and even I worked at the for the AG. I was always interacting with people outside of that. And what was really powerful is the fact that, and granted, when I was with my wife and we were hanging out with friends and stuff, I wouldn't say like I never got out of control of myself, right? I mean, I was always in control, but for some people, it's like a witness. The fact that I can just have a beer with someone, they're just like, well, what do you? I mean, so because they're so used to, a lot of these people are used to legalistic Christians
Sure.
that don't really realize like, oh well. I mean, not only like you don't want to just make it, you don't want to make Christianity just sound like a big fun party all the time, but you get all the good things that you get with Christ, but at the same time, you don't have to just all of a sudden just adhere to this rule book all of a sudden, right? You obviously have to exercise things in control now, right? I mean, just because it's now and always, right? Just because it's good for you as a human, not necessarily because like God tells you to. It's
Boundaries.
It's just like, it's healthy, and the Bible, a lot of times the Bible just kind of points to how to live as a healthy human, right?
Sure.
It's not necessarily just trying to create rules, but a lot of people just think like, all right, I give my life to God. All of a sudden I got to just stop doing everything. I need to stop cursing, stop drinking, stop doing all this. I mean, it's just like, well, I mean, there may be a certain level of control that you may feel convicted about now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's not bad. Right? In the right environments, in the right control, it's not bad.
Part of the challenge too is like I feel like it's one of those topics that most pastors just avoid because it is so polarizing.
Yeah.
And so it's like if someone comes to comes to leadership and they're like, "What's our official stance on it?" They might be like, "Oh, use your own judgment." But it's like when it's just it feels like it's this hot button thing that we don't want to touch. And because we don't touch it, it's like I think of it almost like the inverse situation of like the tithing problem, where it's like, so few people in the church are actually tithing. And it's like, okay, and we talk about it every week. And then there's also the reality that like most people here are probably drinking. And it doesn't need to be excessive. It could be very responsibly, but it's like we just don't talk about it because we're like, well, we don't want to offend people if they're like not into drinking, and like we don't want to give people license to
funny?
get drunk. But it's like we're all doing it. We should probably talk about the right way to do it.
Yeah, right. And yeah, it is funny.
We just act like it's just like, nope, that's just the monster in the closet.
So I think alcohol is a pretty open thing in if you're in a denomination that it's not like looked down on, right?
Yeah.
So non-denominational. The first week I was down here, I went to the church. Like I literally had like, just whiskey and Coke with the youth pastor. And I was just like, this is incredibly profound. Like, how am I doing this right now? Because my upbringing said that this was wrong, or like pastors had to abstain from this. And it's just like, we were chilling, having a great time. We didn't overdo it. It was just fun. Sure. And I was just like, me having been a Christian, since I was 8 years old, that even witnessed to me. I was just like, dude, this dude is so chill. Like he's, you know, this is the kind of guy that's going to go out in the world and reach a lot of people, right?
Sure.
And it just had a positive effect on me. I would say the more taboo subject now is marijuana, right? Because culturally, we're in this in between, right? A lot of other countries don't deal with this, right? Because it's legal. But you know, as of the recording of this podcast, you know, in Florida, it is not legal recreationally. You need a red card to get marijuana from distillery, and there are legal means of achieving the same kind of, I would say, you know, a similar effect of alcohol, except it's slightly different, right? I mean, it's just, you know, the high that you get from smoking marijuana or vaping it or what have you. I don't have a problem with that either. Like half the people in the church smoke marijuana, but it's always that under their breath, like, oh yeah, I do that too. It's just like,
what's weird is like it has medical, like it has
I know.
positive medical
That's
effects.
a whole different conversation.
well, when we were in Dubai,
because there's nothing healthy about alcohol. It is
Right.
poison.
I know.
But because it's classified
And you
as a
can't-
level
you
1
can't-
substance in America,
Oh, I know.
like with like heroin, it's basically saying there are no medicinal qualities, so we can't even do any sort of testing to find if there are beneficial properties.
Yeah,
Like,
so,
even if you
so
separate,
we've demonized it, but we were saying that the mechanism doesn't even allow us to bring it back. And this is, it's just a issue. Like anyone who listens to Joe Rogan, he talks about it semi-frequently, is just like the false pretenses in which we actually banned and made marijuana illegal. But yeah, you can OD on alcohol. You have alcohol poisoning. You can OD on it, pretty much anything else. But I don't even think an LD50 has been established for marijuana for humans. It's not even a thing. Like, I mean, you can't really overdose on it. I mean, and again, any drug can make you open to suggestion and things like that and whatever. And you know, everything has its own effects. Ibuprofen has an effect, all right? I mean, it's just whatever.
was like, you know, the
can
Cat
say
Williams
anything.
joke?
No.
He's just like, I forget how it goes, but he's basically like, Tylenol is perfectly legal, but if you take 13 of those things, that'll be your last headache.
Yeah, right. No, it's
There was a
crazy.
few other expletives in there, but yeah, that was the conversion.
but it is crazy. I mean, for me, when I hurt my shoulder when we were in Dubai last fall,
Yeah.
and the only thing that helps me is if I'll just like vape some THC before bed, and it's the legal stuff. So also
There's nothing wrong with that.
the legalism. Okay, we'll address this real quick because the legalism a huge part of this, right? Because I think for a lot of people, it's a very simple thing. There's a lot of gray area, but it's very simple for people to say, well, that's illegal. We can't touch that because it's illegal. Submit to authority. Again, you know, submit to authority when it's convenient for argument. So, you know, they say that, you know, that's illegal. It's like, fine, it's illegal. I mean, now, you know, there are things like Delta-8, which these are all derivatives of the cannabis plant, right? But the substances aren't technically illegal. So they can sell them over
Right.
the counter. You get them at smoke shops.
Right.
You get Delta-8. They have the THCO, THCP, Delta-10. I mean, there's all these different things that they have now that you can buy over the counter. I have THCP at home, you know, and it's what I use sometimes before bed if my shoulder is like really killing me. I get fantastic sleep.
So it's interesting
So
because
it's just like,
you can go get prescribed Ambien,
yeah.
which is way worse for
Oh,
you.
it's bad. Yeah.
Type of stuff.
We talked about that.
We did talk about that, but again,
That one, I don't know if that one made it. Is that the one that we?
I don't remember.
That story might come up again later. It's fine.
Did that
Question.
one get? Okay, I don't remember.
Do we know what the difference in that THCO Delta-8? Do we know what the difference is between that and?
Delta-9.
Like the
Oh no,
the
no,
plant?
just like straight up, yeah.
Well, Delta. Oh,
I think they're. If I honestly know nothing about this, like to be, so I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna. It's I think on a molecular level they're just shifting things, so it's like it's the same way when
they're not
like
shifting anything. No. It's
never mind.
no.
Disregard.
Yeah, it's the way they extract it from the plant. So it creates a different compound. So but it has similar effects.
Got it.
So,
So it's like,
still
and
the
I
plant.
got my Italian hands out.
I still don't understand.
Sorry.
It's
still
the
don't
same
understand.
friggin' thing.
So you say it's
Ba-ba-da-boop.
you said it's the way they extract it from the plant. So what they're not. I don't understand.
Well, okay, so
We're gonna do some YouTube research and come back.
no, it's like
Circle
one of
back
those
there.
things where I did it again. Gosh, filler words.
But it's
So they extract caffeine from coffee beans.
Sure.
That seems like black magic, right? I don't know how they do that, but it's just like they do something with the plant. So they're legally, I think they specifically defined a certain chemical compound as illegal with Delta 9, which was, I think, the easiest way to
I
get
wonder what it is
to
and
experience the cannabis plant, right? So that has this euphoric kind of effect, right? And then they extract CBD, so there's different things that you can extract from the plant, and this is totally non-scientific. So I could be wrong about
We
some
need
of
to
this.
get a cannabis expert in here as a guest.
Yeah. I think in general, though,
Bring some examples, please. Sorry.
if you could bring some samples, just tell us like, this one has this effect. And so, no, but what I'm saying,
review video coming soon.
bottom line, there's a certain compound that's defined as illegal. They've found their way around it to where they get like, whether they found their way around it or not, it is legal by law. It's legal for them to sell this other stuff over the counter. They've been doing it. And a lot of them have the psychoactive effects that Delta 9 does, like the regular plant. If you were to smoke bud or something.
Oh, is that what it's called? Delta 9, the regular plant?
Yeah. Delta 9 is that's the name of the illegal compound or the controlled substance. The controlled compound is Delta 9.
Marijuana equals Delta 9.
Correct.
The
flower.
But the thing is, marijuana, that's where you get all these other ones too. So
Okay.
The traditional.
yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Wow. Yeah.
But what I'm saying, regardless, okay, there's legal stuff you can buy now.
I need like a
But
family tree.
but there's still taboo. of what they're-
Diagrams. To me, it goes back to the same thing.
I'm
It's
sure
like
you'll-
if we have people, if this stuff is readily accessible over the counter and people in our churches are using it, it's like it's time to start having conversations and not just saying like wrong. It's like we have to, like, you can have your opinion, but in the same sense that we approach the alcohol conversation, like there needs to be a general like actual effort to understand what they are, where they're coming from, why are they using these things. So for you, if it helps with sleep and pain, it's like, okay, so that is not okay, but I can go get a prescription drug from a doctor and destroy my body with it.
I'll share a thought. Here's my thought. I don't know if legality is the right avenue for
That's
people
just
to
a
negate
common
this.
hurdle that
I
we've
think
come
Well,
across.
people
because-
use that as an excuse.
Sure, but I don't think that's valid because alcohol is legal to buy.
Right.
And right. So what I would offer as a thought is the same thing. The same verse, sober-minded, be sober-minded so that the enemy doesn't devour you like a lion. And I would take that to the bank, no matter what substance it is, whether it's a prescribed painkiller, whether it's a legal drug, whether it's an illegal drug, like literally whatever. I'm at my best and most effective state as a Christian man when I'm of sober mind. So when
Yeah.
I'm prescribed painkillers, I need to find a dosage that will allow me to remain that, right? Whether it's legal or illegal is kind of irrelevant
So I
as
guess
long as I
here's
can
a question.
remain there.
Do you think it's possible to have a couple drinks and still be sober-minded?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I would argue in my own personal experience, it's like anything else. If
well, it
if
depends
this
what
is
a
the
couple
first
drinks
time-
is. Because that's
no,
a lot. That's
yeah.
Two? If you mean two
No,
drinks?
real drinks, like
A couple of
like
doubles.
Yeah.
1.5 ounces of alcohol. Yeah, no doubles, just a couple
drinks?
drinks. But like I would view it, and again, only from my own experience. Like it's the first time you experiment with any of these things. Like it's very new, and anyone will tell you the more that your body becomes used to something, so there's one element like you gain a tolerance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not.
It's just
Wait, I know what you're saying.
it's a similar thing where it's like, okay, so if someone goes and tries like Delta 8 or something for the first time and they like just go to the moon, right?
Sure.
I totally get that. But the reality is, like anything else, as you become more used to something or our brains literally have cannabinoid receptors in them. Like
So-
we're created with those.
So here's what I'll say.
So
I'll
it's
say
like
this.
the more you get used to it, it's like I still would say it's
It's not-
possible to be sober minded.
Right, but it's not not
it's-
for the outside world to judge how much you're having. It's the fact that you know.
It's
That's
like
what I'm gonna
internal
say.
wisdom.
Here's
Yeah.
here's my practical thought. Before you do it, pray.
Sure.
Pray about it.
Yeah.
And if you feel comfortable, that's up to you and the Lord. If someone tries to tell you specifically what your limit is, I don't necessarily think that's
This is
possible.
not appropriate. Yeah.
And so if my suggestion would be go pray about it. And if you're fine, do you, but
Yeah,
simple as that
it's-
for me.
It is what it like. I think we all kind of know in our head when we're starting to go overboard.
Right.
I mean, and that essentially, you could say pray specifically. You're naming the step, but a lot of us have that little conversation with God, right? I mean, it's kind of like a passive thing, but we're like, yeah, should I do that? Like when you ask yourself, should I have another one? You're essentially talking to God in that moment. I mean, in my thought, right? Like you're basically asking God and you, I mean, is this going to please God? Like, I mean, if you brought down to it, this is really what you're asking
Sure.
yourself. Is this
Can
next
I
drink
versus should I?
gonna
Yeah.
please God, right?
Because you could do it.
You could.
Question is
Yeah.
should for sure. And I think there's power behind that. If you were to, because there's no way, it just changes your perspective. There's power in it. If you're like, God, right now, should I do this? And then if you feel peace, that's it's on you.
Goes
And,
back to the
I mean-
violation of your conscience.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we got to
Yeah.
be good at, we got to get better at identifying what is shame and what is conviction. Because a lot of times those things can get a little blurry.
Sure.
And I'm not
get that.
advocating for, I'm not saying just do it. Like it's not that. But a lot of times in my life, like a lot of my decisions were made through a lens of shame and
From other people.
no, my own, because I mean, my personal upbringing was very strict. It's like, these are just like never okay.
Sure.
So
But shame is not of God.
100%. That's what I'm. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
It's
So
in the
you're
ch-
saying there needs
it's
to be
of
a-
the church, though.
That's worth talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're real good at that.
There is
no
no
one knows how to
shame
wound
within
their own like the Church
Jesus,
of Jesus Christ. Yeah,
But yeah, I get what you're saying. There needs to be a definitive, because I've heard it put like conviction is beautiful
yeah.
versus if
It brings
someone
you
tries,
closer to God.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit's job is to convict us. And that's a beautiful thing because when he does it, it's not like a shameful thing. It's like a, hey, let's go this way thing.
And even that verse,
Versus-
it talks about his job is to convict us of Christ. So it's a holy conviction that it is Jesus.
Beautiful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
versus when a person tries to convict you, it is messy because it's like, bro, who are you? Versus if Jesus is convicting you, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and it goes. Yeah, so you take it full circle from the beginning of the story to the end. It's like the Bible is meant to introduce people to Jesus, lead people to Jesus, the relationship with Jesus, transform people's lives to where their conscience is saying, is this going to please God or not?
Yeah. Bring it with you everywhere. Bring it with you to the bar. Bring them with you to
Absolutely.
your room with your wife. Bring them
Yeah.
with you. Literally every
Yeah.
example we mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway.
And it's one of those, as the church, I feel like we feel like it's our job to police people.
Yeah.
We feel like it's our job to say, well, I see this in your life. This is wrong. It's not our job. People need to find that conviction on their own, like through Jesus. Like,
Well,
'cause
let them tell you
telling
it's
them-
wrong. Like, let them tell you they have a problem. They don't have a problem. They don't
What do you
think
mean?
they have
The person?
a. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
Well, 'cause I've
don't
had
go
similar-
giving someone help they didn't ask for. I mean,
yeah.
I guess
Solicited
right.
advice. No,
yeah,
that's good.
it
Yeah.
pisses off.
Yeah, no,
dang
you're
near
saying-
everybody.
so
Well,
you're
it's gonna
saying-
make them do it more, right?
Yeah. So you're saying you keep your mouth shut, and that's exactly what I think. I mean,
It's one thing expressing concern, but it's like,
Sure.
this is bad. You're not doing like.
okay, so
I
I
agree.
think expressing concern from a humanistic, like health perspective, like this is going to wreck your life if you keep doing this. That is absolutely valid. Like, because
Right.
I mean, outside the church, you would do that for a friend. You would do that
challenge-
for anyone.
Right.
The challenge is the person in that situation, because I've been on the other side. It's like, yeah, no, I'm aware of that. I've already calculated that into this whole experience, and I'm doing it anyways because it's like I need to escape.
Well, it's cool. So then,
Well, then it'd be like-
let
but
you
that's-
go on your journey. Then
Yeah,
we'll
like
figure it
whatever,
out.
bro. You're going to figure it out.
Well, that's the challenge of addiction, right? It's like we it's so easy to look at it from the outside and just say like they need help, but it's like, okay, first we have to understand like the addiction is not the problem. The addiction is that person's attempt to cover a problem. Now, on the outside, we see the addiction as a problem for them in their life, but they're aware. Like if you ask anyone struggling in that place and they're of sober mind and give you a real answer, they'll tell you like, no, I know this isn't good for me, but like it's better than
needs
the
to be its
alternative.
separate podcast.
Yeah,
Because
I
I've
mean,
been in those places, and it's
Yeah,
like,
for
dude,
sure.
like trust me, I know this isn't good for me. I don't care because
But
this is better than the alternative right now.
Yeah, I get it. What I was saying in the church specifically, we have an issue telling people how they should live their life.
Behavior
It
modification.
just needs to be compassion.
Jesus should be telling you how to live your life. If you accept Jesus and that's your thing, he should be telling you how to live your life. If you have issues with interpretation and you need to ask someone, ask someone.
Sure.
Like get into some discussions about what the Bible means. But giving interpretation to someone who asks for it is not the same thing as telling them how to live their life.
Yeah.
Sure.
That is not your job, right? So in my opinion, it's not our job, right? So I just think, I don't know. It's been a good podcast.
That wraps this up.
We're
pretty nice.
we're over an hour.
Oh, okay.
This may be
bye.
Also normalize, like, dude, Rogan's got 3 hours.
yeah.
I'm good with an hour, but
We ain't Rogan, bro.
I can't hold my pee that long. If I'm honest. I can't. I don't know how they do
Bro,
that. They have to have pee bags under the table or something.
bro, I will buy it for you. They make these things. We've looked into it because
We're not doing that. We got to draw a line somewhere. We got pee bags on the floor.
I support
You need
it.
to start training your bladder.
I support it because they make.
The
There's a
longer
whole.
you push it, the more you'll be able to.
There's an
problem is,
array
though,
of products on Amazon.
I feel like there's something called the bladder neck muscle,
That sounds awesome.
and I think that
Is it in your neck?
no bladder neck, like the neck from your bladder to your pee-pee. So I don't know if girls have this.
So it's your bladder's neck.
Guys, we're done with the podcast. So you can stop listening now if you don't want to hear this. But it's just basic. It's
Alternate ending.
It's the neck. It's the part that goes from your bladder to the exit.
Yeah.
So I think that muscle gets weaker the more you like continue to hold your pee because like you've heard that it can damage your prostate if you
You're not supposed to hold it.
bladder, if
Yeah,
you
it's
hold
bad for you. That's why I feel so bad.
something
caging
I don't
my
know
dogs.
prostate bladder something down there, it damages it. So
Every day I'm just
what I'm
damaging their
saying is
prostate.
that as you get
If they have
older, I'm
prostates.
pretty sure that can lead to I'm not going to mention it actually. I don't think I need to.
It just can get hairy. Don't hold it. Just
things
release.
can get weird in the bedroom. So that's all I'm saying.
That's sad.
As a married person, I'm saying this, right? Okay.
Yeah. No, that's. Hey,
right.
God created sex. There's nothing wrong with
We'll
that.
see you next time.
Yeah, I don't need to get into that.
I love this so much.
We are classified as explicit, so we're covered in
you
case of any of this.
Don't
right?
demonetize us, Spotify.
Okay. Say
You asked for it by press and play.
retrograde ejaculation is what I'm talking about. Okay?
Well, now I have to ask what that is. I am.
Ask Google. Google's got a lot of
Lord.
information.
Not Google Images.
All right. Well, I got
I'm
some
just
homework.
I'm just saying I don't want to hold my pee, guys. All right. I'm saying it's a bad idea to hold
Thank you
your
for
pee.
joining us today, guys.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you kind of at least kind of open your mind to some things that, we kind of go through, struggle with, think about, and ultimately,
Stay
hopefully you
frisky.
kind of understand, as Luke said, it's important to understand the level at which you're not able to be sober minded, make the right decisions and things like that. And, it involves heart checks along the way, but in doing so with certain drugs and alcohol, it shouldn't be an issue, right? It shouldn't be a legalistic thing that we get hung up on as Christians. But again, it involves personal conviction, and I'd hope that for everybody, including ourselves, that we could achieve that. So, anyway, look forward to next time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you.